Okay, Randall, you want to start off the next panel on the industry side since I kicked off the academic one?
Sure. And is it time? Do we have the official nod?
Yep, we're ready to go.
So first, I'd like to hear from each of the industry panelists, and maybe I'll hold off on a question. So YC, Mona, and Kathy, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Okay, I think I'll go first. So my name is YC Wang, and I am the Global Academic Program Director at DigiKey. It came from a purely engineering background. I've worked at a couple of engineering firms in my history and work history. And so I did a pivot from engineering into a sales role and eventually more of a management role. So I have some, ideas as in how students should better prepare themselves for the industry. It's never a cut and dry or cookie cutter type of situation. It's always going to be, they will find their career paths to be weaving in and out of many different fields, many different types of talent stacks. So I'll be happy to bring some of my experience to bear today.
Thank you, YC.
Hi, my name is Monal Parmar, and I'm a founder, CEO, and CTO of Educational Vision Technologies. I started my company while I was doing a part-time master's program at UC San Diego. The initial idea for the company started during my undergraduate, where I was doing my senior design project with Professor Trung Nguyen, who was a former EC chair. Yeah, we've our system has an IoT component, a lot of computer vision, machine learning, and web. So I had to gain expertise in a lot of areas which I didn't have classes in, and then recruit folks in different areas, raise capital, and go through that whole process. And I did have a job for 6 months, but aside from that, it's really just straight out of school I started the company. And yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you, Monal. Kathy?
Hi, my name is Kathy Jory, and I met YC through other companies I've worked for before, and I happen to be sitting in a hotel room in Los Angeles because now I work for this company called Zedita, and I joined them to help the industry and community collaboration around one of the projects that's important to the Zedita work, which is an Edge OS operating system that's under the LF Edge, Linux Foundation Edge group called EveOS. So I get to still participate in open source and upstream, software development, and work for a company that has a commercial solution for management of that. So just in a nutshell, it's like securing bare metal hardware is what EveOS does. And then we have a commercial cloud controller that industry uses to let IT people own the bare metal. And per Randall's comment, now the software is being thrown down as containers or running on top of Kubernetes or just as a virtual machine running Ubuntu or Windows or something like that. And so now these software stacks are detached from the bare metal. So it's probably an interesting thing to talk about here. And you just have like high, good processors running. But then there's the acceleration, you've got GPUs and you got all this other stuff going on, and how do you tie that all together? So there's still a lot of complex software in this world. But my background still, I'm an electrical engineer by study, University of Minnesota and Stanford. And so I still keep my box of microcontrollers because that's how I met YC. So you'll see I have, Adafruit boards and clues and microbits. And so one of my big things is teaching teachers, or maybe sometimes even I volunteer to teach students directly, younger students, but getting them engaged in physical computing when they're young and they're still ripe for problem solving, like I heard earlier. And you get them to solve whatever problem they want. Is it gardening? Is it climate change? Is it animals? Is it robots? Is it wearables and fashion and LEDs? And so I think that's the other part of me that I want to keep introducing that at younger and younger ages prior to university, so that we can fill the pipe of technologists into university.
There are definitely a lot of pieces. So my question for the panelists are, there's lots written on how to hire, and there's a hiring process, but I'd like to hear from you. Who is a new college grad, somebody who you had to work alongside or you knew well, and what exactly were the qualities that made you appreciate that person? Was it the expertise they had? Was it their personality? What are the elements that are important to industry in a successful employee?
I can give a stab at that, Rando. So I have interviewed new college grads before, and I can also draw from my own experience way back when I was a new college grad and I was hired into a semiconductor company. And so, in my opinion, the technical aspects of it definitely would have a would be weighed heavily. They will have to be technically competent in the area that they are being hired for. For example, if they're being hired in an FPGA company, well, they better know logic design very, very well. They better know, how they better have a good idea of what an embedded system is, how it integrates into everything else, and they also should have a good idea on the languages that's used to program and manipulate programmable logic such as FPGAs, and at that point in time, C or C++ for the embedded components. So having said that, there are a lot of very soft skills that a new college grad should have. And I think that they don't realize when they graduate that they will need. Number one is the ability to learn and not to be cocky about anything, not to tell their manager, of course I can do it. They have to be able to admit, no, I don't know how to do this, but you hired me for a reason, and I'll be able to pick up this knowledge, learn, and run with it very quickly. The ability to accomplish projects on time and work very closely with teammates who may have completely different personalities and views from them. This is where things like capstone projects and even to some extent study groups in a university setting will come into play, because that's where they do that person-to-person interaction. And I think that is a little bit missing during the 2020 lockdowns, when students were asked to essentially study from home. And so I think that is something that students who are now about to graduate, who've been locked down for a year, will have to pick up rather quickly. And it's a critical soft skill that I think needs to be taught more. And from what I've seen so far, a lot of universities cover these soft skills only in the senior year, specifically in the capstone project courses. There are universities doing more of a hands-on coursework, hands-on curriculum that stretches maybe all the way back to the freshman and sophomore and freshman years, and that's definitely a good thing to get them to be familiar with at a very early stage. And the other thing is the ability to work with hardware. A lot of them will come out of college saying, well, I know how to program this, I know how to program that, but okay, do you know how to use a scope? Do you know how to use a Tektronix? Do you know how to solder? Do you know how to build a PCB? These are things that companies often have to spend time to ramp up in these students. And I think these are components that will perfectly, if you're looking for a perfectly well-rounded new college grad, I think they should have a little bit of these and not be afraid to learn. And so the ability to learn and the ability to admit that you don't know something will be the most critical part, because you got to let your management know that, hey, I don't know this, but I can get it done nonetheless.
Thank you, Maici. I've been keeping notes that I'll share. Who next?
I can go next. So we have 8 criteria that we look at when we're hiring. So technical is of course a very important one, but for technical, it's baseline competency. So if can you do you have enough technical knowledge to get the job done? And so it's so that's one piece of it. Determination, like what evidence is there that they can work very hard, and if there's tight deadlines, they can meet them. So one question for that is like, during what period of your life or career have you worked the hardest? What were you doing? How many hours per week were you working? Mission, another criteria is mission. How well do they align with our company? Like, is this something that they really want to bring into the world? And so, do they align with the mission? Because when things get really difficult, that helps, they're not going to quit. Team, have they worked in a team setting? Do they like to work by themselves? And questions, there's plenty of questions you can ask for a team, but like, name an example of a good team member you've had, name an example of a bad team member you've had, and let them talk about those experiences. Communication, that's a bit difficult to gauge, but just in the interview process, seeing if they've written any documentation and past work. Likability, so this one's very subjective. Like, are they likable? Is this person it's kind of, that's of course hard to gauge, but we often have the individual meet with other members of the team individually or with the team as a whole, and because likability is very important. Integrity, like that's integrity, of course, so many of these things are difficult to judge, but like if they don't have integrity, I don't care if they're the smartest person in the world, just I don't want to work with them. And creativity, it's more important for certain roles. Like if it's a design-based role, like you need to be very creative. If it's like a back-end role, less creativity is okay, but that's another area we gauge. So those are really the 8 areas we gauge. And it's and so I can go into more later, but it's during the pandemic, I think the technical preparation might have taken a hit because you're not able to work on things physically. You're not able to, might not be able to work on projects as in depth as you would if you were in person in a group setting. But hopefully, there's other areas that students were able to work on.
Thank you, Manal. Kathy.
Hi. Yeah, those are really good comments from both of you. I'll just tell you for me, it's the looking at students fresh out of college. I don't really expect them to come in to know how to solve the problems that the company is engaging in right now. I think, well, it depends on the size of the company. For a smaller company, you might want something a little bit more focused, or someone who has an advanced degree in a research area that's going to really help you. Depends on your needs. But if you're just hiring, new grads that are going to come in and improve things in general, then, the technology bar of the graduation is sort of the low bar. And then you may need some extra knowledge or research or experience on top of that. But for me, it's the curiosity, it's the desire. So it's really hard, but if you can somehow derive that notion that this person is curious, so we all have the ability to learn, but do we want to come in and make a difference and improve things for the company? So it's really that desire that I think I look for, like and especially hobbies and projects, not necessarily related to the school. And so I look for that desire to do really cool things, and what are they doing on the side, and what have they engaged in? And then the other 2 things, other than all the normal sort of like, this is a good person, they can communicate and they can write out stuff. I would say the other things I look for are diversity of background and experience, demographic, geographic, cultural, like get some background on them, because maybe some companies are a little too focused on what did you do and what did you learn, but where did you come from? How far did you get? Like that also shows that desire piece. And then references. I mean, I can't tell you how many times like just references have made a difference. That usually works better for someone who's already been in a career to get references on people they've worked with. But even fresh out of university, if there is a way to get references from their fellow students or something like that, that's also, I find particularly useful. Like how in terms of how they get along with others and what others think of them. And so if you could get references from professors or something that are sort of real and informal and casual, that might also be helpful. I find that helpful. So that's my take.
Thank you. So I think that the academic portion is doing a pretty good job to address all of those. Here's what I've captured. Knowledge of specific technologies and familiarity with lab instruments, getting some hands-on, being able to make a printed circuit board. But it's a baseline of knowledge. It doesn't have to be a specialist, because industry is going to hook them up with somebody who knows better the technology and will bring them up to speed. So the other part of this knowledge was expectation they don't know it all, but that they have this curiosity element. In the soft skills, I came up with humility and ability to learn, determination, communication, likability, integrity, creativity, the ability to document. And I think that the universities have one of the better opportunities of getting people to document, because they have to have something that's graded. The guy who gets out of school and does as good a job documenting when he doesn't have to get a grade, that's a gem there. That's a guy who can write the owner's manual. And then diversity and background. What I didn't hear in soft skills is raw energy level. But and then the other three other elements I heard was be able to forecast how long it's going to take somebody to get something done. Now, I know there was the personal software productivity books that Carnegie Mellon University produced, and it encouraged people to develop and learn their own productivity rates, so that when they told a boss how long it would take them to write a program they estimate to be this big, they were reasonable. But I haven't heard anything on the academic or the industry side on that. And then mission alignment. Does the person, no quitters, I want team players, which means you better be interested in the thing you're doing. And then the last point I had was references. Anybody care to add a comment on the panel, or even in the from the other panel on those points? Are we covering all bases there? Any surprises?
I'll add one quick.
One
We've
of
got
the
two.
feedback that we got from our advisory council, external advisory council from industry, was that a student's ability to think on their feet quickly on something that are not necessarily they have been exposed to in their previous experiences. So how quickly students can react to this new problem that has been exposed to and several of our members said, yeah, that's a very important aspect, that when we hire for interns, hire for our industry, we look into this aspect. So any comment from our industry panel would be very helpful on that.
I don't know. I think there are some of those classic interview questions where they're open-ended, but they just are intended to watch how the interviewee thinks in terms of how did they come up with, there's maybe no specific right answer, but what did they think about to get there, and just look at their cognitive skills of thinking through things and being confident about, what they came up with. So maybe that's the type of interview question that might expose that, or are you looking for some like quizzes where there is one right answer and how quickly did you come up with it? What do you think is, I don't know what's better.
So can I add to that? So on Monday's discussion, we had a gentleman who worked at Tesla who brought up that when a Tesla interview will basically involve you going on site and then plopping a part of the schematic of something that's actually used on the production line right in front of you, asking you to identify what that particular circuit does, and you have 30 minutes to do so using all your engineering skills. tremendously powerful interview question, also a little scary, to tell you quite frankly. But it puts the interviewee in a situation where the person may be strong in, electric motors or feedback and control systems, but here is something completely different, and that will be a sink or swim type of situation. But I think all students should prepare for such interviews, and they may become more and more common nowadays in the industry.
I will say generally what an interviewer tries to do is to learn one's personal contribution, not the team they were on, but what did they do on a team, thinking that one's history is the most predictor of the future. So generally getting these students with a lot of different experiences would be good. Let me ask another question of the panel. In school, people are taking a lot of different courses. They're jumping, so they might consider. I don't know if there are any schools on the quarter system anymore, but a class is somewhere between 10 and probably 14 weeks long, and then they jump to another topic. So, with the exception of maybe these integrative courses, there might be some follow-on. I'm going to pick up on the next quarter what I just finished on the first quarter. But can you comment on the length of time and the focus of a student when they get into their job? My bias here is thinking that a student has never had to focus so much on one thing, which is to get the product right. It's not about a time deadline to pass a course. It's about getting the product right. Any comments from industry here?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's actually one thing I often, one of the first questions I ask about a project, it's like, how long did you work on it for? And then, how much time were you actually spending on it, and what's your contributions? So yeah, just like the duration of how long they worked on a project is very important. And that's, I find that, a lot of students, they've only worked on a project for 2 weeks, 1 month. And the students that usually are more impressive have worked on projects that are 6 months long, 1 year. Yeah, so that's my comment.
Kathy, YC? Nothing more on that?
Well,
Does that,
I was making way for Kathy. So Kathy, do you want to go first?
Well, I was just going to say that also, yeah, look, just thought of it, but internships and summer jobs, and then did they take that experience and bring it back? And, because I had that opportunity to have summer jobs and experience, and then I started tinkering more. I started doing more. I took advantage of it. And if you could get them to, I think industry should do a better job of pulling college students into internships in general, in the summer or during the year, or however, now maybe even virtually. Like, why not? Since we can be anywhere. I think internships is a fantastic opportunity for students to get a little bit better knowledge of what the real world is about, and then take advantage of the ability to improve before they, fully graduate.
Thank you. YC?
Well, so the ability to commit to a project and to deliver a product is very, very important. And I think it also ties to the students' ability to focus on a specific task, the attention span. But I think one thing that's being overlooked is the ability for the student, especially in a setting of a smaller company, to become essentially the universal engineer. One point that we brought up on Tuesday's panel discussions is whether students can be molded into a well-rounded universal electrical engineer by the junior year. Can they have enough engineering knowledge such that by the senior year, they can pick up a specific thread in a threaded engineering curriculum to focus on, but they will still have the ability to absorb and pick up other skills? I think this is really, really important in the ability to bring any project to completion. Because if you have someone who's an embedded expert, but then they have to design their own PCB, but they've never done it before, and they're under a project deadline to finish it, that is an expectation of the job. And they may not realize it when going through school or maybe even during the interview process. And I think the interviewers will also have to be frank and honest in bringing this up, not to scare the potential employee, but also to bring up the fact that, hey, this is going to be a responsibility of yours when you join this company. Are you capable of doing that? Even if you don't have the skill, I would prefer you to have, again, right, the ability to admit you don't have it, but either find the right people who can make it happen or learn it yourself.
Thank you. There is a distinction between going to school to get a credential. Now I'm an electrical engineer, and the expectation of what you really must be expected to know. In other words, you're not going to school exactly for the credential, you're going there for the education. And is that well understood? Is there emphasis on what they're going to need to know? And some of those things might be more on the technical side. But I think, Ashfaq, did you have a question?
I was just going to say that this ability to this attention span we were talking about, how long they can work on some things in the typical academic environment. What we have seen is that from one course to the next course, there's a whole range of students that would forget things, and then the professor at the beginning of the next course, they have to spend some time to refresh. And if we have long chains of dependency from in a particular curriculum thread, then I think we have bigger problems in that particular scenario. And with this COVID thing, I have seen that students' ability to focus has significantly diminished. I don't know if my other colleagues have experienced the same thing, but we have gotten complaints from our student advising services over and over again the last year that students have difficulty focusing on their course contents and are complaining about their this stress that they're going through.
That's an interesting comment. Here we are in a Zoom meeting. What level of attention does each of us have? Would it be higher in a classroom? That's an interesting concept. We're going more and more online, but we might very well have to compensate for the channel itself and people's individual needs. Any other comments? And otherwise, I'm going to switch topics ever so slightly.
Hey, Randall, just a subtle reminder that we have 2 minutes left for this panel.
2 minutes. So I'm going to be real brief then. And so I've hired scores of engineers, and one of the things that I always found very helpful was to find somebody who's been exposed to some latest technology. And my presumption is that they can get that better at the schools because the researchers on those specialized topics are there. And so in the case of working at DigiKey, we had a huge data exhaust of that could be analyzed: predictive analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence. And so we knew what we wanted to do, but we didn't really have anybody on staff with that experience. And so there's a beautiful opportunity. I'm going to find myself a summer intern who's had a little bit of exposure to this stuff. And I would say that is a tremendous benefit that the new hire gets, in that he doesn't have to come in being arrogant and confident that he can solve the company's problems, but there are significant enough problems that they can run with them and let them be the company's master on that. And in fact, that's what happened at DigiKey with some predictive analytics to better serve the customers. So any comments on that from the industry folks? Are you looking for people with a complementary knowledge, something you need to have but couldn't get? The easiest way is to get it from a new college grad?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have poached from research labs, like, okay, which labs, which technical areas, which labs are in that technical areas, message students, hey, are you interested in summer internship? So yeah, that's most definitely a very good area to hire from.
I wanted to just take a little side jump. I noticed Aisha's comment in the chat window, and I thought it was a really pertinent comment, you know, that looking for students who have been student leaders, you know, the IEEE this and that, and the HKN. And I remember doing things like that. And so you're looking for natural leadership, because the ability to organize people not under your direct control to solve problems is, you know, one of the definitions I like of entrepreneurialism. You want someone with that spirit who could come in with a can-do attitude and knows how to inspire people to join them in solving problems. And the other thing I thought of while we were chatting here is maybe an idea is just like, if industry could come in, Randall, like you said, with some of the problems they're trying to solve, bring in a whole bunch of engineers, engage with students one-on-one, pair them up and say, you know, you have 5 minutes to come up with a solution to this problem or something. And that way the industry person gets to learn the student. They go back and they say, did anyone sit down and do this with some whiz bang student that, you know, we should bring in for an internship? Like that might be a pre-internship little project that industry could do. And the more exposure students get to industry, things like that, and talking to people in industry, the better. Career stuff, everything.
Yeah, we also do senior design capstones. So that's a good way of, you know, figuring out who would fit and so on. But yeah, the IEEE student orgs has worked for me personally. I got recruited because of that. But also I look at them because they seem to technically stand out too. It's not just their talk, but they have technical competence and they're able to organize workshops and agreed, you know, they come into the company and, you know, hit the ground running, which is what we need these days.
Right. And my son, you know, when he was going through school, he's a civil engineer, but he led his capstone team in the project for pumping water. He was a and he got a civil engineering job based on, you know, presentation to the industry that came around and looked at those projects. So those are very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.